behalf of our pastor and our board and our church, welcome to St. John's. We thank you for being here tonight, and we wanted to provide a service tonight in lieu of our normal Wednesday night service that gives our gathered community a chance to come together and to process all that's happened over the past few days since Sunday morning. So as we go into this service, be open to receive all that God has for you to be here. We've said it many times before, we don't believe anybody ever makes it here by mistake, that if you're here, it is by divine appointment. So be open to receive and be open to share. This service is designed for you to allow you a chance to participate, to process, to express yourselves, and to truly be all of who God called you to be. And as you're able, rise as we sing our opening hymn, Great is Thy Faithfulness.
Strength for today O Holy One, we first and foremost and most always, and particularly today, give you thanks and praise. When it's hard to see a reason to give you thanks. When it's hard to give you praise. In such a time as this, when we are drawn together because of a great loss, many have already come to you in prayer, and one question has popped up. Why? That answer we may not know at this point. We can figure out that the individual was disturbed. We can say that the individual was misguided. We can say that the individual was lost. And in all of that, deemed it necessary to take the lives of 49. Deemed it necessary to injure many more. So we now ask you just to let your spirit fall down on us this evening. May that peace that passes all understanding be present tonight. Because right now we're not understanding. Some are hurt. Some are angry, mad, and just not even present yet, because it hasn't sat in their souls. So may that peace be with us this evening. Stir in us. For those of us who are here to be a comfort, use us. For those of us who are here to be comforted, may we be open to receive. For those of us who are here just because we didn't know where else to go, may we understand that this is the place to be. We thank you for this opportunity. And again, let your peace be with us. In and through your Son's name we pray. Amen.
For God alone my soul waits. My help comes from God, who alone is my rock, my stronghold, my fortress. I stand firm. How long will you all attack me to break me down, as though I were a tottering wall or a sagging fence? Their plan is only to destroy. They take pleasure in lies. With their mouths they utter blessing, but in their hearts they curse. For God alone my soul waits. For my hope comes from God, who alone is my rock, my stronghold, my fortress. I stand firm. In God is my salvation and glory, the rock of my strength. All you people, take refuge in God, trusting at all times. Pour out your hearts before God, our refuge. Common folk are only a breath, those of rank an illusion. Placed in the scales they rise, they weigh less than a breath. Do not put your trust in oppression, nor in vain hopes or plunder. Do not set your heart on riches, even when they abound. For God has declared only one thing. Only two do I know, that to you alone belongs power, and that you, Yahweh, are steadfast love. Surely you repay all according to their deeds.
I want to help all of us who are here tonight, those who may not fully grasp the sense of the sanctuary that was destroyed, not only in Orlando, not only in the Pulse, but for so many of the rest of us. I wrote on my Facebook this week for family, mostly scattered around the South, and for former co-workers from the mid-'70s who knew me when, exactly how important those big southern nightclubs were for me as a young man. How it was in those places that I first truly found community. You know, I'd been raised in a big Baptist church surrounded by youth group. You know, we always had a big youth program. We had 2 buses that the church owned, and when we went on trips, we took those trips together, and everyone was there, but I was alone. And I remember so many times coming back from those trips feeling more alone than I did when I went away on a week mission trip or whatever, that I just didn't have anybody there that I related to. It was interesting, at every trip there was always at least one person that I could talk to, and years later I reflected back and thought they were probably just like me, probably just as alone, but at the time we couldn't talk about it, we couldn't reflect on it. But I heard about nightclubs, and when I came along we could drink at 18 in Georgia. We were one of the first states to be allowed to do that, and thank God they can't anymore. But we could, and I didn't drink, but I wanted to go to those nightclubs that I heard about. And I went, and how many times did you circle the block, those that came in here, before you finally stopped? How many times did you look for a parking place? It wasn't even the first night that I found a parking place. I gave up. I decided to go home. I wasn't quite ready. But when I finally walked in that place, and I looked around and I saw other people like me, and other people that weren't like me, but other models of people that I could be, and in enough of a number that I felt like I wasn't alone, I remember how incredibly liberating that was for me, and how I wanted to go back. I remember the first night that a stranger came over and asked me to dance. Turned out he was married. But I remember him coming over and asking me to dance, and just that feeling of shock, of kind of awe, of not knowing exactly how to respond, but knowing that that was somehow normal. My classmates had started doing that in the 8th grade. But here I was 19, and it was the first time happening to me. The first time I had that opportunity. And I went to those clubs, and I went every chance I could get. I went to a club where I went to college where it wasn't even totally a safe club, I found out, because the word of my being there dancing with another man made it all the way back to my hometown and all the way to my Sunday school class, and I found that they were praying for me. Not that I went to a particularly homophobic church, but they were praying for me. They let me know that. And I said, thanks. I'm glad to know that. But I knew that things would never quite be the same there. But that was a place of safety for me. I had a classmate in seminary that wrote a theology paper about the Saint in New York, which was a big nightclub at the time, and he compared it to a sanctuary, to a place of worship, to a place where people went and celebrated and danced. And everything that I've read about the Pulse has made me think that that was one of those places. That for so many, that was a place of safety. That was a place of celebration. And I have to think particularly on Latin night that it was a sanctuary for a minority within a minority. I've been to Latin nights at clubs in Los Angeles, and I know that they were always somewhat more elegant than the nights that we had at the bars, that people dressed a little better, and that was the night they had valet parking, and that was the night that people truly celebrated and did their best and could truly be their best. And as I looked at the pictures of the young men and the young women and how well coiffed they were and how well dressed they were, even in the pictures, I had to imagine how beautiful the people were that were in the club even at that late hour. And I can remember, I imagine some of you can too if you admit it, what it felt like at the bar at closing time. Especially for working people, and they were mostly working people if you read their story. They had saved up all week, to be there, and it was a special event for them to be there. You kind of didn't want the night to end, that you wished it was one of those bars that stayed open even later because you didn't want to leave. And for some, I'm sure, just like it was for me, you were looking around the room at the fellow that you had locked eyes with several times earlier in the evening and seeing if he was still there and seeing if maybe you could meet him in the parking lot afterwards. Or you were saying goodbye to your friends, or as we found that during the week, one of the young women that was there was texting a friend and showing her pictures of the other friends in the group right at the moment that the shooting started. The music was still playing. But when the DJ heard the first shots, he began to lower the music, and then he turned it off entirely. But the shots continued. And they rang out in the loud bursts of sound and the breaking glass and the shouting and the screaming and the calling out for help continued for 3 hours. For 3 hours, somebody lived in that horror, lived in that uncertainty. Some people fled to a bathroom, and that turned out to be a bad decision for them. Looking under the stall walls, they could see the killer pacing back and forth. And then the killer left, and they breathed, I imagine, a sigh of relief, and then he came back and started shooting the people that were already dead to be sure that they were dead. It was a horrible time. And I don't want to spend much time thinking about the killer, but I want to go inside his head a little bit because we're finding out more and more about him. And I think he had been lied to too, more than once in his life. Somebody had told him that it was okay to knock women around, that women didn't have the same rights that men did, that women somehow were weaker than men. Somebody had told him that it was okay to build up his body by taking drugs and not be concerned about what that would mean for his mental health. Even though there have been plenty of studies, he didn't worry about that. His father told him, and this, when I heard it, I said, that's not the whole story. His father remembers that he saw 2 men kissing and that it so offended him that he mentioned it. But I don't have to tell the other gay men in this room how many times that has happened around me. How many times somebody has said, ooh, look at that, isn't that disgusting? And I've had to pretend to nod my head and agree with them because I didn't want to be singled out, because I didn't want them to know my truth. So I was inclined to lie. I haven't done that in a long while, but I can remember doing it. I can remember being so ashamed of who I was that I would agree with the hater. I can remember classmates who I knew were more like me getting married because they felt that's what they needed to do, and having children because that's what they needed to do, and waiting until they were in their 40s or 50s before they ever grappled with the truth of their lives. And I have to think a lot of that was pent up in this man. We find out that he was no stranger to that place, that he'd been there before, that he was no stranger to dating applications. And as I looked at the men in the picture and I looked at his pictures, I had to think that he tried to present himself as one of them and maybe didn't find himself as attractive, or was thought, as some of them said, to be weird. Don't talk to him. And so all of that pent-up anger was inside of him as he went into that club that night. I'm not trying to elicit any sympathy for him, but I know that misinformation is in the world. His religious leaders had told him that those who were in that place were worthy to die. And every time he heard it, I have to imagine that in himself he thought, I'm worthy to die. I'm not worthy to be alive. And the politicians in our country would tell him that his people should not have been allowed into this country. Can you imagine what that would be like? To have immigrant parents that had moved you into this country so that you could have a better life, only to be told over and over again that your parents should never have come here. Only to hear from your aunts and uncles and those back at home that they were being bombed constantly by the government where your parents had decided to stake their claim. He was an angry young man. And I don't agree with him, but I can come in touch with his anger as I think about it. And so as I come here tonight, I can think about all of that anger in that place and all of that horror experienced by the people in that place, especially in that bathroom. One of the young women who was there said that even in the last minutes, even as the police broke through the wall, he killed 2 more of them. He was killing right up to the end. And yet there's still politicians who deny that this was a hate crime. There's still politicians who want to make this about religion. One of the blessings for me this week, this has been my 3rd service this week to be a part of, is being in so many services around this city. 4th, someone just reminded me. I've lost count. So many of the people that have spoken at these rallies have been followers of Islam. One of the richness that we have in this community that I didn't enjoy before in Baltimore, Maryland, is there are those who can speak about the richness of their faith. And in listening to them talk about their faith, it's so similar to mine. So many of the stories are the same. We read tonight from the Psalms, a shared document. We listened tonight what it meant to be people of faith. And I say to you tonight that people of faith are people of faith are people of faith. And we cannot let the enemy divide us. And I don't want this service to skip over anger. And if you're here in anger, I want you to be able to express your anger. And if you're here in hopelessness, I want you to be able to express that too. But I have seen some glimmers of hope, and I need to mention them tonight. One is that in 1973, on June the 24th, there was another massacre in a gay bar in New Orleans. It was called the Upstairs Lounge. A fire was set by an angry patron, probably somebody who didn't get paid what he expected to get paid, and he threw lighter fluid on the steps of the bar in New Orleans, and a fire swept up the stairs and killed 32 people in that bar, many of whom were members of the Metropolitan Community Church there. The pastor of the church died a particularly gruesome and visible death when his body was wedged in the bars as he tried to get out of the bar, and he was wedged in the window there, and his corpse remained wedged in that window for 2 to 3 days before they finally cleared the scene. And it was only in the 3rd day that somebody even covered him up. He had children. He had grown children. But one of the saddest things about that story is that many families, not no one, but many families wouldn't even claim the bodies of the dead because they were afraid to come forward. They were ashamed of who their children were. They didn't want to be seen there. And when our denomination attempted to go to town and to hold a memorial service, there was only one church in town, the United Methodist Church, that allowed us to use their space that night because churches didn't want that kind of publicity, didn't want that kind of attention. And at the end of the service, the word came through that there were news cameras outside and people were being thought that they should leave by the side doors. But a woman stood up in the back of the congregation and said, "We came in by the front door and we're leaving by the front door." And everybody in the sanctuary left by the front door. But that was an act of extreme bravery in those days. So I'm blessed that this year, in this Pride Month, there were parents in the sunshine saying, "Where are my children?" There were parents that were not mentioning any kind of shame about the place that their sons or their daughters might have been, but instead were screaming out in the same kind of pain that any other parent would do and saying, "Where are my children? Why aren't they here?" And more than that, I have been just incredibly touched and blessed by the thousands of services around the world dedicated to this week. by the thousands of people, gay, straight, family members, children, who have gathered all over this world to say this is not okay. This kind of hatred, this kind of anger is not something that our planet can accommodate and accept. Whether some people like it or not, the world is changing. The world is becoming a different place. And even in moments of this type of ugliness, even in moments of this kind of hate, even when we say, as Charles says, why, and we cannot quit asking that question, we also can see hope. And so I need to leave you, as well as with our anger, and I'm just moving into my anger right now, I can also feel and see some hope. So tonight we wanted this service to be an opportunity not only for members of our church and for our deacons and for our leaders to speak, but we wanted to invite you to take the microphone and to speak, or to take the microphone and sit silently, and we will sit with you. And then we will wrap up the service at the end with a time of reflection together.
My name is Laura Gillerin. I'm 41 years old. For 28 years, I lived in San Francisco, California. I've lived here for 13. With all that happens, through every tragedy, through every act of terror and horror and painful event, I want to share with you, I have seen time and time again, from the vigil for Matt Shepard, from all the AIDS vigils, from all the pride marches, from all the lobbying, from everything I have seen with my own two eyes, that there is one thing very clear. We come together. We stand together. We hold each other up. We honor our feelings. We trust the process. And we show hope and love and unity. And I am very proud of this community, not just the LGBT, but everybody who stands together. Thank you.
I want to say thank you to everyone for allowing us to be here and to have this. I think it's so important because being gay, we all know it's hard to connect sometimes, and we're isolated in so many ways. So I really appreciate the opportunity. And I've never been to this church. I don't go to church. But this is so nice. So thank you, you all. And I'm just excited to be here. Thanks.
It's hard sometimes when you think about a lot of this. It took me days to process what happened. The first night, it was like waking up to a nightmare. Like, can we wake up to something better, seeing stuff like this on the news? And Sunday and even Monday, I hurt so bad in my heart that I couldn't even find the words to say, to even think about the amount of pain that people were feeling, because I could not rest, I couldn't sleep, and just thinking about it, the feeling of pain and hurt, and just trying to understand how someone could hate so much something that people were just trying to be somewhere they wanted to be and be who they are and love themselves. But we think about that, and I remember when I was about 20, I'm 28 now, I went to this club once or twice when I visited Florida, and I remember what it was like on the inside. I'm sure it changed over the years, but it was always crowded. This is probably busier than even the clubs we have here. And I remember thinking, wow, it's so crowded in here, like people love to come here. It's a booming place. And I know I saw lots of smiling faces then, as I'm sure we've seen plenty here where people went to have a good time, to see their friends, to see people they love, they care about, to, go out and celebrate birthdays and some of the stories about people that were, going to celebrate potential marriages in the future or just spending time. And there was a story of a mother who was there with her son, and she protected him to lose her life to make sure he could be okay. And I thought about that, and that's the first thing my mom said to me when she called me was, if I had have been with you, that I would have done the same. But to hear her, the hurt in her voice, to think about her saying to me, I think about all the time when you go out or when you're places, and I worry that things like this can happen. But then that's when my faith kicked in to remind her that, God is always in control of any situation. Things like this happen, but at least you know that I'm going to be okay if something happened because I'm going to heaven. And that comfort and peace from a lot of people knowing where they could be. So a lot of people at work this week asked me my thought about it, because being out and gay at work, people want to know, well, what do the gay people feel about it? How do you feel that so many other people like you died? And the only thing I could say is it didn't matter if they were gay. They were people, just like you. They were human. It doesn't matter your race, your sexual orientation, because there were straight people there too, no doubt. The gay club is not just gay people. And they said, well, I didn't think about that. And for a minute, I think that kind of stumped a lot of them, making them feel like, wow, for a moment, this isn't a gay thing. This is a thing about people, and people that were hated for no reason. So it's hard when we think about the comfort to find in a situation like this, and all we can do is pray. And as time goes on, people always say things get better. We can't forget these lives that we burn these candles for tonight, because as I saw Vance lighting the candles, it hit me again. Look at how many lives were snuffed out for no reason, just because someone didn't understand or was angry or just couldn't be there. So as these candles burn and the flames go out tonight, they have to remain in our hearts and in our minds as we continue to pray for those that are still recovering and the families, to let these people's spirits and what they lived for live on through us, through love for everyone. And we have to continue to love one another so that hate doesn't take over here or anywhere else, because there's that saying that we're all saying, love, not hate. We have to believe that. Not only do we have to believe it, but we have to live it. Love you guys.
I went from hurt to anger. And I was hearing prayer. And I had prayed and cried, and I was hearing prayer. And I wrote on my Facebook, prayer is good, but prayer isn't enough. And what I meant by that was, just to pray, you need to have action. You need to do something. It's written, if you take one step, he'll take two. If you, faith without action is useless. And so now, this day, I'm able to look not just in this place, but I'm able to look worldwide and see action. So I'm a little less angry, because I feel that there's more happening than just prayer. Folk are coming together. My one is that we stay together, particularly in the US of A, and we're getting ready to have an election. No politics, not all that, but think about that. Who is going to be able to help us make a difference, continue to move forward? The best candidate is all I'm saying. Well, whatever the candidate is, that's your choice. But think about things like this. And if something had been done earlier, as far as things being in control, or some safeguards that should have been in place. That's all I'm saying. But I can honestly say my anger is a little less, because I appreciate, I look and I see the love. And I see that it's not just me hurting for folk that were in that club. I see folk hurting for folk, and understanding that this is senseless and it's useless and it needs to.
Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. The ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and the cruelty by the bad people, but the silence over that by the good people. Both quotes from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that I found myself led to as I started to process everything that went on this week and as I processed my own emotions. And as each of us find ourselves in various stages of the grieving process, I've tried to figure out where I'm at in that, and I'm not sure where I'm at yet with it. And I imagine there's a lot of us in the same space. Sunday morning, many of us woke up to the news of the tragic events in Orlando, Florida. Many of us in that morning and in the days to follow received numerous phone calls from family or loved ones concerned about our well-being or wanting to just express their emotions and ask how we were, because it was a stark reminder of them of just how short life can be. I can't help but to think about the numbers of other people who never received that phone call, or the 49 family and friends who made the call to check on someone who never made a contact with them. I think it's important for us to remember that. I think it's important for us to understand that as we're faced with the emotional roller coaster that we are faced with, that we start to try to process that and process all that has happened. For some of us, the full magnitude has yet to be realized. My hope and my prayer is that somewhere through this week, maybe through the course of this service or through the course of something you hear, you can start to process and you can start to move forward. Not to forget. I want to be clear about that. We must never forget, but we must move forward. There's much work yet to be done. The actions taken by the shooter this past Sunday morning were those of what we identify with as a conflicted individual. But I think they're more indicative of a discrimination that still exists today. As the quote Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had there that I read earlier, it indicates that the ultimate tragedy is not the act of violence that occurred, but the ultimate tragedy would be our silence, would be the silence from our community and our allies now. Jesus spent most of his ministry among those who were ostracized and marginalized by the societies in which they lived. The disciples were among that same group. We're no different today. It's important now, more than ever, for our voices to be heard, for us to realize that we are who God called us to be and who God created us to be. As one of our ministers likes to put it, we are God's rainbow people. And we should celebrate this, live it out in every part of our life, being all of who God called us to be. In the days to come, in the weeks, in the months to come, we remember the victims. As you read and hear about each one of them, I encourage you to look for and see the reflection of God in each one of them. And as you do that, look for the reflection of God within yourself. Look for the reflection of God within all those around you. Embrace the love that surrounds you, the love that God freely gives. And most importantly, embrace love unconditionally. Seek to be the light that you wish to be or see in others, and seek to be the change that you wish to see in the world. It's important for us to remember that that's how we move forward from this. That's how we get beyond this. That's how we stamp out this hatred, how we stamp out the discrimination. As you feel comfortable, when you feel led, now I invite you to come up to the pulpit, or to the altar, and take one of the extinguishers and extinguish one of the candles. And as you do that, be reminded that although these 49 lives were extinguished, their lights are still burning. And as you extinguish that light, know that that light then is not being extinguished, but it is passing into you, and it is incumbent upon you at that point to carry that light on, to share the stories, to be all of who God called you to be God's rainbow people.
Holy God, be present with us tonight. Be present in this place. Remind us that as we leave this place, we take you with us into a world that is hurting, a world that is hungry for you. And so, God, in this moment, we offer the blessings to you here that you offered to your disciples in that upper room. We offer, God, that when we leave this place and when we feel this spirit and this food, that it is your presence and your power, and we take it with us. In your name we pray. Amen. We'd like to end our service tonight here with a time of response. We will be serving what we Christians call communion over here on this side of the sanctuary, which we will offer that through intinction. One of the things about Metropolitan Community Churches from our very first service back in 1968 was that we've always offered communion at our services. And we've always done it in a way that was intended to be inclusive. At that first service, half of the people that were there would not say that they were followers of Christ, but everyone was invited to either be a part of communion or to receive a prayer. So I'll be offering communion over at this station, and we'll have prayer partners available for you over there. So we invite you to come and receive the blessing that this church can offer you tonight so that you might go out from this place and be the blessing that God intends for you to be in this world.
Please rise as you're able. And as we get ready to go back out, be reminded of the lights that were extinguished, the lights that have now been transferred into you. Know that it's incumbent upon each of us to go out and be all of who God called us to be, to go out and spread the love so that we can truly extinguish the hate and the discrimination, so that we can use all the emotions that we have gone through this week and all the emotions that we will continue to go through for the days and weeks to come. We can use them to continue this journey we have been placed on to extinguish hate and discrimination in a right and good way so that we can truly rejoice on the other side of it. As Pastor David shared with us, I hope that you can see the hope. I pray that you can see the hope in the days to come as you read and you hear about the lives of the 49 in Orlando. And join with us as we sing ourselves out.